If someone told you a stranger had spent hours silently watching them inside a nearly empty Walmart, you might assume they were exaggerating. But what if security cameras later confirmed every second of it? My name is Samantha. I was 20 years old when this happened, and at the time I worked at a Walmart supercenter outside a small town near Jackson, Alabama. Back then, the store operated 24 hours a day. Since I wasn't attending school full-time, management often scheduled me for overnight shifts. Most people imagined a Walmart at night as completely deserted, but that wasn't exactly true. There were always a handful of workers stocking shelves, cleaning departments, and preparing the store for the next morning. Still, compared to daytime, the building felt enormous and strangely empty. The shift started at 10 o'clock at night and ended at 7 in the morning. On this particular night, only a few employees were scattered throughout the store. A couple of cashiers worked near the front registers, while several stock associates handled freight in different departments. Because our store sat deep in rural Alabama, business dropped off dramatically after midnight. Most nights, customers became rare. The silence would gradually settle over the aisles until the store felt less like a busy retailer and more like an abandoned warehouse lit by fluorescent lights. I spent the first part of my shift in the men's department folding jeans and organizing displays. Like many overnight workers, I kept headphones in while I worked. There usually wasn't anyone around to complain about it, and the music helped pass the time. At around 11:30, a customer approached me. That wasn't unusual. We still got occasional shoppers before midnight. He was an ordinary-looking man. Nothing about him immediately stood out. "Do you have these in a different waist size?" he asked while holding up a pair of jeans. I checked the rack and shook my head. "I'm sorry," I said. "Whatever's out here is all we have." "No problem," he replied politely. He thanked me and turned away. As he placed the jeans back, our eyes met for a second. It was one of those awkward, accidental moments people usually forget instantly. He walked away. I went back to folding clothes. And for a while, that was the end of it. Or at least, that's what I thought. As midnight passed, the store grew quieter. The distant sounds of shopping carts disappeared. The occasional conversations faded. One by one, the remaining customers left. Before long, I could look down entire aisles and see absolutely nobody. The Walmart had transformed into a giant maze of shelves, polished floors, and fluorescent lights. And somewhere inside that maze, the customer from the jeans section was still there. A little after 1 in the morning, I had moved to the appliance department. My job involved bringing inventory from the back storage area and stocking empty shelves. The work was repetitive but straightforward. I loaded a wagon with boxes and pushed it into the aisle. The shelves in that section weren't very full, which meant I could see through gaps in the neighboring aisles. While opening a box of coffee makers, I noticed movement. Someone was standing in the next aisle over, watching me. The second he realized I had seen him, he turned his head away. For a brief moment, though, I had caught a clear look at his face. Something about him felt familiar. I stepped sideways and looked through another opening between products. Then it clicked. It was the same customer from the men's department, the one who had asked about jeans. My stomach tightened. I checked the time. Nearly 2 hours had passed. How was he still here? At first, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he was a slow shopper. Maybe he was comparing products. But something didn't add up. I casually pushed my wagon farther down the aisle and crossed into the section where he had been standing. I wanted to see whether he was actually shopping. His hands were empty. No cart, no basket, no merchandise, nothing. The realization settled over me like a cold draft. No normal customer wanders a Walmart for 2 hours carrying absolutely nothing. I suddenly became aware of how isolated I was. The nearest employee could have been several departments away. The shelves towered around me. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. And somewhere nearby was a man who seemed far more interested in me than in buying anything. I hurried through the rest of my stocking duties and returned the empty wagon to the back room. For the next little while, I stayed there, partly because I had work to do, mostly because I didn't want to go back out. I sat in the employee lounge scrolling through my phone, trying to convince myself I was overreacting. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe he just happened to be in the same areas. Maybe I was being paranoid. But every time I replayed the image of him staring at me through the aisle, my uneasiness returned. Eventually, I couldn't avoid work any longer. I decided to switch departments. If he really was lingering around appliances, then I would spend the rest of the night somewhere completely different. So I headed toward grocery, specifically the dairy section. I remember feeling relieved as I walked there. What I didn't realize was that changing departments wasn't going to solve the problem, because the man wasn't interested in a department. He was interested in me. The dairy cooler sat behind heavy insulated doors in an employee-only area. It was one of the coldest places in the building. Inside, industrial refrigeration units roared constantly, creating a wall of mechanical noise that drowned out almost everything else. I began loading crates with milk, yogurt, and other products. Part of the process involved checking expiration dates, so it took time. The cold air bit at my hands while I worked. Minutes passed, then more minutes. The loud hum of the refrigeration system filled the room. At some point, I heard something cut through the noise. The cooler door slammed open. The sound instantly caught my attention. I looked up. Nearby pallets were stacked with boxes, and between two of them was a narrow opening that gave me a partial view of the entrance. I glanced through it, and my heart nearly stopped. The same customer had just walked into the cooler, an employee-only cooler. At almost 2 in the morning, I didn't hesitate. Every uneasy feeling I'd been ignoring suddenly felt justified. This wasn't coincidence anymore. This wasn't accidental. I quickly dropped down behind a shelf and pulled a large box of eggs in front of me. The refrigeration units were so loud that I wasn't worried about making noise. I just wanted to disappear. The cold concrete floor pressed against my knees. I tucked my head down and listened. Somewhere in the cooler, the man was moving. I couldn't tell exactly where. The machinery swallowed most sounds. That uncertainty made everything worse. I waited and waited. Seconds felt like minutes. Minutes felt like hours. I kept expecting to hear the cooler door open again. I kept expecting to hear it close, but I never did. The longer the silence lasted, the more anxious I became. Had he left? Was he searching? Was he standing nearby? I had no idea. Eventually, after what felt like forever, I convinced myself that he must have gone. Maybe he had looked around and given up. Maybe he hadn't seen me. Slowly, I lifted my head from my folded arms. I peeked over the box and immediately screamed. He was standing right there, only a few feet away, looking directly at me, smiling, not speaking, not moving, just smiling. The shock hit so hard that my entire body locked up. For a second, I couldn't even process what I was seeing. The smile vanished the instant I screamed. His expression changed completely, and then he moved toward me. The moment he stepped forward, pure panic took over. I tried scrambling backward, but there wasn't much room. He reached toward me. Then suddenly his hand came up toward my face, toward my mouth. Instinct kicked in. I jerked away before he could cover it. The fear that had been building all night exploded into adrenaline. I grabbed the large box of eggs sitting in front of me and shoved it as hard as I could. The box crashed into him. Cartons burst apart. Eggs shattered across the floor. The sharp cracking sounds echoed through the cooler. For the first time, he seemed distracted. He glanced downward at the mess covering his shoes. That split second was all I needed. I bolted. I ran directly past him. I expected him to grab me. I expected to feel a hand on my shoulder, but it never came. I sprinted through the cooler doors and into the store. The bright aisles blurred around me. My breathing was ragged. My heart hammered so hard it felt painful. I didn't stop until I spotted another stock employee. I still remember his name because I immediately looked at his badge. "Bob, help me," I blurted out. There was a man in the cooler. Before I could fully explain, the customer appeared. He walked right up to us. For a moment, I thought he was going to run or attack me. Instead, he did something completely unexpected. He apologized, calmly, casually, as though none of what had just happened was strange. "I'm from corporate," he said. "I didn't mean to scare you." I stared at him in disbelief. "Corporate?" He continued talking. According to him, he was supposedly checking store operations and making sure employees were doing their jobs correctly. He claimed he entered the dairy cooler simply to see whether I was working. Bob seemed to accept the explanation almost immediately. I couldn't. Nothing about it made sense. "Then why did you try to put your hand over my mouth?" I asked. He barely hesitated. I was trying to avoid making a scene. The answer sounded ridiculous. Even then, I knew it. Yet he spoke with complete confidence, as though saying something absurd would somehow make it true. Then he did something even stranger. He told me to finish working in the appliance section. Not suggested. Told me, like he had authority over me. Then he turned and started speed walking down the aisle. I watched him leave. Something inside me refused to let him disappear without an answer. "What's your name?" I shouted. Without turning around, he called back a single word, "Tom." Then he vanished into the enormous store. I barely slept after that shift. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the image of that man standing over me in the dairy cooler. The smile, the silence, the way he had appeared without making a sound. Most of all, I kept thinking about his explanation. The more I replayed it, the less believable it became. Corporate employees don't wander stores for hours carrying nothing. They don't secretly watch workers between aisles. And they definitely don't enter employee-only coolers at 2 o'clock in the morning. The next day, I contacted one of our managers, Margaret. I told her everything, from the encounter in the jeans department to the moment he appeared inside the dairy cooler. I also asked whether a corporate representative named Tom had been scheduled to visit. There was a long pause. Then Margaret gave an answer I will never forget. She said the story sounded like complete nonsense. Not my story, his. There was no scheduled corporate visit. No employee named Tom. No reason anyone from corporate would have been inside the store during those hours. The conversation immediately became serious. Management reviewed security footage. What they discovered was terrifying. The cameras showed that the man had spent a significant portion of the night following me through the store. Whenever I changed departments, he changed departments. Whenever I moved, he eventually appeared nearby. The footage confirmed what I had feared all along. He wasn't shopping. He wasn't inspecting. He wasn't lost. He had been stalking me. A police report was filed after management realized the man was simply a random stranger who had entered the store and spent hours tracking my movements. To this day, I don't know what his intentions were. I don't know why he chose me. I don't know what might have happened if I hadn't hidden in the cooler or if I hadn't escaped when I did. Those questions still bother me. What I do know is that after learning what the cameras revealed, I refused to work overnight shifts anymore. Margaret understood immediately. No one argued. No one tried to convince me otherwise. I still work at that Walmart today, but now I work during the day, either stocking shelves or helping customers as a cashier. The sunlight, the crowds, and the constant activity make the store feel completely different. Safer. Yet every now and then, when I pass the dairy section, I remember that night. And I remember a smiling stranger who claimed his name was Tom. A man who never worked for Walmart at all,